We are live.
Good, thank you. The time is 7:05 on Wednesday, April 26, 2023. I'd like to call this Active Transportation and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee meeting to order. The first item of business is to appoint the vice chair. Nominations are open for the vice chair of the Active Transportation and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee for a 2-year term, 2023 to 2024. Are there any nominations on the floor? Basically, you can help correct me if I'm wrong. In case I'm not here, you would chair the meetings. There's not much more to that position than that. I expect to be here at most, if not all, meetings, so it's not an onerous position. Are there any nominations? Owen?
Yeah.
Any other nominations? Seeing none. We'll accept you as the vice chair of the committee. You have to. Okay.
Just formalize that into a motion.
Okay. Can I get someone to move that? Steve? Gino? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Congratulations. Do a land acknowledgement. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as the other nations whose presence here continue to this day. As the closest First Nations community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississauga and Chippewas recognized through Treaty 13, as well as the Williams Treaty of 1923. A shared understanding of how the rich culture heritage has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to here today. Will help us walk through into a better future. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda, please? House, Gio, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no minutes. We have one delegation this evening, delegation 6.1, Renee McCameron, resident, item 7.3, request for a parking bylaw amendment on Benville Avenue and parking restrictions on Evans Park. Welcome. Go ahead, you have 5 minutes.
So my name is Renee McCammon and I have lived in Aurora since 1995. I'm a member of one of its many weekly hiking groups, and I'm here tonight to delegate not only on behalf of my hiking group, but also on behalf of a growing number of residents in Aurora and beyond who are becoming increasingly concerned regarding an accessibility issue at the southern trailhead of the Nikita Trail at Evans Park on Benville Crescent. We have 2 main goals with regards to this delegation. Number 1, that a recommendation be made by this committee to council that Evans Park, as the southern trailhead of the Nikita Trail, requires clear and accessible parking for those who wish to start the trail here, but do not live in this neighborhood. Number 2, that a further recommendation be made that the proposed bylaw amendment restricting parking on both sides of Benville Crescent not be passed, and that the temporary no parking signs that are currently there and were put up without council's approval be immediately removed. We make these recommendations for the following reasons. First, Evans Park is the southern trailhead for the Nikita Trail, a 20-kilometer point-to-point trail connecting Aurora, Newmarket, and East Gwillimbury. We applaud and we thoroughly support the mission of this committee to further develop Aurora's part of the trail, thereby encouraging further active transportation connecting residents to the recreational, educational, and business opportunities in our town. The northern trailhead in Holland Landing has a small unpaved parking lot. Currently in Aurora, not only do we not have a parking lot, we have no parking signs on both sides of the street in front of Evans Park. 2, the Nikita Trail appears in several significant online hiking guides that are referenced by hikers regionally, provincially, nationally, and even internationally. Presently, if any hiker, after reading these guides, were to drive to Evans Park, they would be faced with no parking signs. 3, as reported to council by David White in May of 2021, staff completed a technical assessment of Benville Crescent that concluded that parking should only be restricted on one side of the street from a traffic engineering perspective, and that the initial concerns of the residents were more related to nuisance and litter issues resulting from increased use of the park and trail system during lockdown, as opposed to traffic flow safety issues. Yet traffic flow became the dominant issue in the March 7th, 2023 Planning Department report. As hikers, our own experience suggests that the issues raised in the report are not unique to Benville Crescent. We are very concerned that if the town council passes this amendment, the precedent could be used by a small number of households in other neighborhoods, and that access to the trails would become significantly restricted. As I mentioned at the general council meeting, I do acknowledge the impact to residents mentioned in the report when cars park on both sides of the street. My husband and I live on Tamarack Trail on a curve right next to an access point into the Case Woodlot. Every day, hikers park their cars in front of our house, often on both sides of the street. At times, we are down to one lane, and we need to wait for another car before we can travel down the street. We have to be extra careful when backing out of our driveway, and during the day, snowplows have to navigate around the curve and the cars. But despite all of this, we know that the Case Woodlot, like our entire trail system, is an amazing natural community resource for all to experience and enjoy. Finally, concerning the actual results of the survey of Benville Crescent residents, only 7 of 41 households surveyed supported option 3 of banning parking on both sides of the street to House 87. 4 households chose no restriction, and 1 household chose restricting parking only on the east side. That means 5 did not choose option 3, which also means option 3 is being recommended because of a difference of just 2 households. All of these numbers seem extraordinarily small, especially when compared to what cannot be measured, and that is the wishes of those who do not live in this neighborhood, but wish to begin hiking at the southern trailhead of this amazing trail system that extends from southern Aurora to Holland Landing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I get a motion to receive the delegation and refer to 7.3 on the agenda? Second, Owen, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Thank you. Just maybe some guidance from the committee, because we have some guests who I'm sure don't want to necessarily wait for all the items on the agenda because they're last on the agenda. We also have a lengthy discussion, most likely. I just wanted to get a sense of what you're expecting from the committee tonight regarding plans.
So it's an update presentation.
Okay.
That we're going to, the intention was not to have a detailed discussion at committee today,
Okay.
but rather for everyone to hear from us, to take away, to look at the maps, to use the tool on the website, and then to have a second meeting in the future, or more of a working session.
I was going to suggest that. Perfect. So why don't we go to their presentation, go through that, and then we'll address yours before item 7.2.
Okay.
That was yours.
Right, thank you. Folks, I hope you can hear me. So my name is Dave McLaughlin. I'm leading on behalf of the Active Transportation Master Plan for the town of Aurora. Next slide, please. This presentation is really to provide you with an update on the work that's been completed to date and to sort of set out the next steps and to engage this committee now that it has met on participating in the development of this plan. Next. So in terms of progress, we're partway through the study. A little bit, I would say, approximately 65% in, but we're at the best part of the study for you all to participate. We've had pre-consultation interviews. We've had consultation. We've been at the farmers market. We have an online tool for engaging residents, and it's been promoted throughout the town. You may have seen we had those large signs up and around the town, trying to drive people to the website to complete the online mapping tool. And we've got some great comments. We'd like more, and we'd like you all to encourage your colleagues and friends who are interested in trails and active transportation to send them to the Engage Aurora website and to use the tool to add in their comments. It's a really great way of doing that. So we've done a background review. We've prepared 3 discussion papers. All the discussion papers are posted on the Engage Aurora site that provide more detail than what I'm going to present today. We've developed a candidate route network. It's not a draft network yet. That's for all of us to work on. Gino's eyeing me, I see him now. So what we did was we built upon the existing network. We looked at the network that was envisioned in the Transportation Master Plan. We looked at York Region's network. We looked at the provincial network in terms of guidance for active transportation in this part of the region. And we incorporated it all. Then we applied the methodology, which is an Ontario Traffic Manual Book 18 that was completed in 2021, but provides a really good process for developing a network by looking at a number of different criteria, and I'm going to present those to you today. And if you're interested in that resource, we can send you a link to it. But it's a document that municipalities across the province are now using. So there's some consistency in the way master plans for cycling and walking are developed, but more importantly, on decisions about facility types, the kind of infrastructure that you would implement to accommodate various users who are interested in active transportation. And this is an important meeting today. We'll have another working meeting with you as well after you've had some chance to review the information in more detail. And I know some of you have already provided comments. I had the opportunity to meet one-on-one with Klaus, and others have reached out to have one-on-one meetings, and I'm pleased to do that. I'm also pleased to have a working session with this committee when you're ready. Next slide. Next. So these are 3 vision statements that we tested through the public process. We haven't picked one yet, and these may not be the final vision statement. We'd like this committee to actually be actively involved in reviewing these vision statements and or proposing modifications to them. So when we next meet, it would be great if we could get some input from this committee on what you think the appropriate vision statement should be. We did build on the vision statement in the Transportation Master Plan that was done by another team in Aurora, as well as the Trails Master Plan. So there is consistency there. But we would like this committee to endorse the vision statement for the master plan, and we've given you some options to start. Next slide, please. So some of the draft objectives of the plan is to provide and support a variety of transportation options, to support community health, to improve connectivity. One of the common comments that we have received about active transportation in Aurora and in most municipalities we work in is that there's a lack of connectivity, and that really trying to zoom in on areas that you can better connect the network should be prioritized in the future. Coordinate with existing and future infrastructure projects. The town has shared with us their capital plan in terms of projects for the next 10 years, and we're using that along with the information we've collected from York Region through the Transportation Master Plan. And all of that information is being considered as part of the process. And part of the reason why we're looking at that information is that there's a lot of cost efficiency to try to implement AT infrastructure at the same time other roadworks are being planned. So for example, if it's time to reconstruct a road and the municipality is coming in and replacing 50 to 60% of the curbs at the same time, there's an opportunity to revisit the curb to curb width. And without having to do any form of a Class EA, they could consider, adjusting the location of the curbs. For example, if the road was built to, suburban standards that were in place 20 years ago and it's overly wide, there may be an opportunity, similar to what we did on Clark and Vaughan, to actually move the curbs in, create more platform in the boulevard, and put a bike facility and or sidewalk in the boulevard off the road. And municipalities, and Vaughan being one of them, have been starting to go down that road where the opportunity presents itself. So these are things that we want to talk about in this master plan for Aurora, because in time you'll be rebuilding your roads and there will be opportunities, and you want a master plan to identify those opportunities. So when the time comes for the road improvement, that you have a plan in place that tells staff to take a look at that and see if you can use the opportunity to implement a better facility. Safety and accessibility, we talked about accessibility, very important. Applying the built environment standards that are standards in Ontario now, have requirements in terms of accessibility, especially for trails. And even though this is not a trails master plan, we're integrating the active transportation plan with your trail strategy. Next slide. So just a few highlights of some of the various documents we looked at, the trail cover. And I like to point that out. And I tell Klaus this, but he always forgets. The people in that picture are my dog, my wife, and my daughter. My daughter is now graduating from high school. But it's because you had to have a picture and have permission to use the picture, right? So being the sneaky resident, I thought, I'll take a picture of my family. So anyways, your Aurora master plan. In the middle, you see OTM Book 18. That's the cycling facility guide that was developed first in 2013, and then again in 2021. And I had the opportunity to develop those guidelines on behalf of the province of Ontario, both versions. And the most recent one is really quite an update to what we had before. There's a lot of guidance in there that speaks to road conditions, posted speed, and other elements that then influence the kind of facility type a municipality should be considering. So we didn't have those tools really before, but now we do. And it's meant to provide consistency across all municipalities going forward. And then, the official plan, absolutely important for the town of Aurora. This is not just an infrastructure plan, it's a plan that builds upon policy and articulates and details the kind of policy that's captured in the higher level OP. And your official plan here in Aurora is quite clear in terms of what you're trying to achieve in terms of a multimodal strategy. So this active transportation master plan builds upon those statements that are in the OP. Next. So we did a best practices review. I'm not going to go through all the details. I just we looked at a number of municipalities to compare lessons learned from them that we thought might be appropriate for consideration. And we could not look at Newmarket because it's your neighbor, your cousin. And we looked at Sandton, BC and Cambridge, Massachusetts, because it's not that they're similar in size, but they had similar elements that were comparable to Aurora. Next slide. So the document, identifies some key takeaways, and there are more in the discussion paper. But recognizing and thinking about biases and overrepresentation of certain groups. Many years ago, master plans for cycling, for example, were implemented and conventional bike lanes proposed based on the input of really hardcore cyclists at the time who were quite involved in the conversation. I'm looking at Steve down there. But not that we're blaming them, but the reality is they are, 3 to 4% of the population. So when you do traffic counts today and you look at how many cyclists are using bike lanes on moderately to busy roads, guess what? It's 2 to 3% of the population. But that's not what we're really trying to do. Municipalities are trying to get the majority, or at least a significant part of their population, to have better access and to be comfortable using active transportation infrastructure. So the new provincial guidelines are sort of flip the lid, so to speak. And the focus is now not on the Steve Flex of this world who are really experienced cyclists, but actually on everyone else, families, younger people. If we're going to get people cycling and walking more in the town, they have to be comfortable at a young age, and parents have to be comfortable allowing their children to learn those skills and to use the infrastructure. Otherwise, you're not going to get the multimodal modal splits that you and many other municipalities are targeting. Plus, there's a really big benefit of linking that kind of activity with public transit. Aurora is blessed with a GO station in the middle of town. There are so few municipalities who have that. This is just a fantastic opportunity to develop an active transportation network that really sees that GO station as a bit of a heart in terms of getting to and from. So those are some of the lessons that we learned from the various municipalities. Having a 10-year phase plan is really important. It's important to cost a plan, but the reality is you need to revisit the costing every 10 years because doing a 20-year plan and estimating what it's going to cost from year 10 to year 20, I'm a consultant. I can tell you it's the best guess. And it's important though that, you focus on the costing for the first 10 years and that you remind yourselves that, every 5 to 10 years, you need to update the plan and you need to keep on looking at that next 10 years of projects and then assign a more realistic cost because council needs that information. The worst case that happens is when municipalities, do master plans and, it's estimated to say, oh, this plan is going to cost $20 million. But by the time they get to council and they're proposing projects and they look at what's being asked of them, they suddenly realize this is not a $20 million plan. Suddenly it's become a $50 million plan. How did that happen? So it's important that these master plans provide, really good, clear information and provide the kind of information that you and council can use to make decisions within a really reasonable time frame and not, pitch ideas that are, 20, 30 years down the road. It's good to have it on the plan, but not in terms of, implementation because you have to revisit it anyways. Next slide. So what we've heard today. So we had the opportunity to talk to staff and visitors at the farmers market. They were very interested. In fact, we were a bit of a magnet at that farmers market, even though the signage didn't look, really draw people in. As soon as they found out what it was all about, it was amazing. The farmers market. Once you get 2 or 3 people, hanging around the site and talking about something, suddenly everyone else has to come. It was unbelievable. So we had a really good turnout. I was really pleased with that event, and I anticipate we will do that again, Michael, because I thought it was very effective. And it's a good way of reaching out to people who, bringing a study to them when they, don't have. Everyone's busy, so they don't have the time to come to us. So next slide. A few details. So we had 566 unique sort of visitors to the Aurora Connect site. It's not insignificant for a town the size of Aurora. Some of the key barriers: lack of sidewalks and trails, high speed and noise of vehicle traffic, poor conditions of existing sidewalks and trails, top barriers to cycling, significant gaps in the AT network. Remember, I talked about connectivity. That's what people are also saying too. It's not a big surprise. Lack of connectivity, especially between on and off-road trails, is something that is a big consideration. Priorities for improving the network when we asked. People were really interested in connections and amenities along the corridor. And, they want some new sidewalks, but I think they really want what they call safer cycling infrastructure. And what that means is different depending on who you talk to. But people would like to have cycling facilities, ideally, that are further away from cars on busy roads. And that's the input that we've been getting, and it's not a surprise. Next slide. So we created an online mapping tool on the Engage Aurora site using the tools that the town has available. You're all invited to go to this location and provide your comments. You can zoom right in. It is fairly easy to use, and you can add your comments. We'll see them. Everyone else in the town will see them as well. So please be nice. We are monitoring them. And we're using that as a tool to collect information. We'd like to use this tool a little bit more. So as of February, there are only 13 comments, but we were just getting out of the winter. So we want to promote this a little bit more, but we're getting some really great comments. And for those of you who use the tool already, thank you. Next slide. Next. So discussion paper 3 goes into a lot more detail about how we came up with the candidate route network that you currently have before you. It's in your package, but it's also available on the website. This sort of summarizes the network development process. And I think I captured this, but we looked at existing conditions and routes that I proposed in the past. We identified some route selection criteria, and that was using OTM Book 18. We then identified some candidate routes, and we looked at all the public comments we had at the time and started to come out and apply sort of basically a line network that seemed to achieve better connectivity for the municipality. We also took into account where development's occurring and where development may occur in the near future, because those are opportunities to get this kind of infrastructure in a shorter period of time. So we went out and did field work by bike and by car. We did a photo inventory of many of the candidate routes throughout the town. We had meetings with town staff so far, a few meetings with them and one-on-one at the opportunity I mentioned with Klaus and the landscape team to talk about trails. And then we took that information and we refined the candidate route network. And that is the version that is in your package today that we're looking for your comment on. Next slide. So these are just some stats on existing pedestrian infrastructure you have in the town that we just wanted to share. I mean, small town, 330 kilometers, it's not insignificant. You have an impressive trail system and sidewalk network system in the town. There just are some key missing links. Next. The existing cycling network. Again, you know, the trail system really stands out, but in some of the more recent development areas, you have been implementing cycling infrastructure, whether they be in boulevard bikeways that York Regions have been doing or you've been doing. You know, they are all adding up, but there's still a big connectivity issue. So, you know, if you're going along the multi-use pathway along Wellington, you know, and you're coming from Bayview and want to go to this GO station, you have a problem. You almost get there, but you don't, but you need to. So that will be one of the key recommendations of this master plan. Next slide. So the route selection criteria we touched on sort of builds upon the objectives I shared earlier. So safety and accessibility, you notice how that moves up to the top actually. Connectivity and continuity, the feasibility. So, you know, these master plans, they need to be more than just lines on the map. People have to go out and look at the corridor and understand if we're going to put in a buffered bike lane, or if we're going to put in a multi-use path in the boulevard, or a protected bikeway, you know, what has to change on this road to make that happen so we can understand the cost implication. Because we don't want a master plan when staff come back in 5 years and go, oh my gosh, that's impossible. What was Dave thinking? We don't want that to happen. We want you to know that there was some initial feasibility analysis done to demonstrate that there is a way to implement the facility that's proposed in your master plan. There might be a cost to it, and that will be in the plan as well. But it's important that you understand that, and that that facility was based on the methodology and the provincial guidelines. Supporting multimodal needs, public transit, active transportation, cycling and walking, really, really important. Again, getting back to that point I made about the GO station and also connecting to the regional transit system along Yonge Street are really important opportunities. Connecting and expanding on existing trails. I mean, Aurora residents love the trail system in this town, and we can make it better and improve upon it, but we also can connect it for others. And that's one of the goals of this master plan. And then connections to green space. Again, you know, awesome green space in the town. Some of it's connected really well by trails, but if you're a cyclist and you're on the road and you're not on that trail, it's not always easy to get to. So that's part of the consideration as well. Next.
You have a lot more.
No, almost done. He's giving me evil eye. So this is the proposed candidate network. We're not going to go through this today. This is online. I can also, it's attached in your package. Michael has a high resolution PDF of it. Okay, so you can use that to mark it up. But you can also go online and use that tool to add your comments. We really like you to go through and spend the time to do that, so that we'll have a follow-up meeting where we can get together and talk about your comments when you're ready to do that. And the next one is for the pedestrian network. Same thing. This one is multi-use trails and sidewalks. The other one was on-road cycling facilities and multi-use trails. So the multi-use trails are on both of them. Next slide. Next. So this is, I think, one of my last slides. So the discussion papers I would encourage members of the committee to have a look at. They're online on the Aurora site. We're meeting with you today. We met with other groups. We're now looking at the capital project information that town staff has shared with us to see how that impacts the network we've currently proposed. We're now also working through and looking at facility types for the candidate route network. So while you're looking at the line work and thinking about connectivity, we're going to try to go a little further ahead and start talking about facility types. And then when we come back together, we'll be in a better position to share that information, but also to refine the network based on your input, whether we add or subtract. You know, we can do that together as a group, and that's what I think that's important for this committee to have that opportunity to really shape what's in this master plan, so that when we go to council hears that, you know, this committee's been very active and has participated in the development of the final plan, and we would like you to do that. And then just finally, there are two papers that are left that we're going to do, the policy and education paper and sort of the recommended network and guidelines that would, and costing of that, which will all fall in place once we sort of all agree in principle what the network will look like. And that is my presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Could I get a mover and a seconder to refer the presentation to the item? Gino, Steve, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Thank you very much. Before I just start the discussion, I just want to acknowledge Councillor Gilliland. Thank you for joining us. And I see Lily on screen as well, another member of the committee. Thank you for joining us online. So why don't I open up the floor? As Dave said, this will be back, so probably shouldn't be a thorough discussion tonight. Some time to digest a lot of information and plan for another meeting to have maybe a workshop, to have a deeper dive to the documents and to better understand them and give feedback to the staff and consultants. But let's open up the floor, and if anyone has any comments, the floor is yours. Gino.
Somehow I knew I'm gonna have comments and Dave, thank you for the presentation. I did have an opportunity yesterday to look at it. I did provide some comments. Unfortunately, I left them at home. For input, do you want us to go onto the website and put our inputs there before we have a workshop? So we can identify it?
You know, that's up to you. I live in Aurora. If you would like to
I live
connect
here
with
too.
us, since you did all this work recently and you wanted to share it today, I'm pleased to get it sooner than later in advance of the workshop, so I can look at those initial comments. I'd be pleased to do that, Gino. But you know, everybody, the online tool is really good for adding comments, but it's not the only source. Klaus has given me a significant written comments and markup maps that we've already incorporated as best as we can in the current candidate route network plan. And I know he has other comments. And so, you know, we can do that. I expect he'll want to meet with me one-on-one too later, again. So I think that would be fine. Share the information sooner than later with me, and then we can have a broader discussion as a group at the workshop. And that applies to all of you too. If you want to reach out directly through Michael, because there's something that you'd like to talk about before we meet next time, I'd be pleased to, you know, communicate with you.
Okay, I'd like to meet with you, but I think I'd like to also have the opportunity to hear from others within the group. I think it's important. I think sometimes for those of us that are immersed in it or subject matter experts, sometimes we need to hear input. I like to hear inputs from Aurora residents the same way I hear inputs from the public. Sometimes, you know, you provide us different perspectives. So I'm not sure, because I think our next meeting in June, how quickly we can give. I guess give everybody an opportunity to review online, and then maybe we make an informal. I don't know. How do we have another meeting? Do we have to have a formal meeting, or just meet informally in here and maybe just?
I can schedule a workshop.
Yeah, like a typical,
Yeah.
like committee workshop.
I can do the workshop too.
Is that possible?
Yeah, we can do that, or we can have
that
it in a
okay?
meeting, whatever works best for you.
Does everybody, I know what your schedules are. I know I'm busy. I do work during the day, but you know, gives ourselves an additional month. I'll leave it up to maybe before we end. After the weekend.
Let's just hear everyone, and then we steps.
First of all, I just want to thank John for encouraging me to be part of this this committee. And also Dave for acknowledging my enthusiasm for cycling. It's pretty high. I used to compete professionally as a triathlete and then as a cyclist, and I am an avid and active cyclist, trying to do everything as much as I can by foot or by bike. So I'm pretty keen about all of this, but it's not about me. It is about, as David acknowledged, getting more and other people using other means of transportation than the car in Aurora. And the thing that really I find fascinating about Aurora, and Dave acknowledged this, is that, and it's always struck me, it's got the bones to be a great active transportation place, because no one is far away from anything in Aurora. You've got Yonge Street, main transportation corridor. You've got the GO station right in the heart of town, essential transportation hub. You've got the two commercial strips, 2+, Bayview, Yonge Street. No one lives more than 2 kilometers away from anything of significance in the town. If you just look at it from that map that Dave had up at the end of the transportation there, presentation there, no one lives more. There are people in South Aurora that are further away. But I'd say 80% of the people that live in Aurora are more than 2 kilometers away from anything that they would ever need. So that's an easy bike ride, a long walk. So that's where it sort of starts and finishes for me. And if we can somehow come up with physical infrastructure and then promotional, and this is the big part, the culture and the behavior is so much revolves around the car. It's the default. So the real challenge will become over time, promoting and encouraging people to change their ways. And we can do everything we can with Dave's work, implementation of council and the committee to do all this stuff. But really it's that behavioral and cultural piece that's going to take time to get people to change their ways. And thanks, Dave. I'm looking forward to sort of getting this going, however it goes, because it's frustrating. I mean, there is some little tidbits of great infrastructure here, but you're coming along Wellington and you get within 400 meters of the GO train station and you can kind of wave at it, but you're risking life and limb to try and go that final 400 meters to the GO station.
I don't think there was a question there.
No.
I'm looking at you, but there's no question. I just wanted to end with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Klaus?
Yeah, I just want to, this is echoing here. I don't know how to shut that off.
Only when you speak or when everyone speaks?
Yeah, when I'm speaking, my own words are coming back to me.
Maybe take one ear off or take it off when you speak. Take it off when you speak.
How do you do this?
Something. There's probably a microphone on your.
Take your headset off when you're talking.
Yeah. Take it off when you're talking.
Take it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to.
Yes, it's
Being back, eh?
the delay. So just talk.
Okay,
When you're
yeah,
talking, just talk.
thank you. Is there a microphone for me here? Yeah, it is. Have it up. Thank you. I started with this by wanting to put emphasis on the nature in Ontario, in Aurora, and wanted it respected in development applications and so on. It was a matter of getting trails to have people walk into nature and appreciating it more and more.
Go ahead.
That has to some degree been enhanced recently with the COVID period. People went out there and they finally realized that this is something they like. And so in the outline under, I guess, the website, I don't know where I found this, Aurora Connects, write up about it, eh? And it speaks to ensure that community values are reflected. More and more, we are realizing that people want nature around them when they walk out there. We had a survey just about 15 years ago for the Aurora Trails Master Plan. I never saw it at the time, David, that we had this. I don't think we were ever fed this information. This is a survey where people were asked how they were walking these days, whether it was sidewalks or roads, basically, in those days. Then they were asked if they had an opportunity to switch to trails to conduct this walking, these activities, would they switch? This is 96% wanted to switch away from roads. And that reconfirmed my ambition, basically, to get people to have a corridor network in nature. That has not happened other than in the valleys. We have under the official plan review, we now have a map of all the nature areas like the environmentally sensitive area, all of that on and off the moraine. If you combine the two, you get a total map of where the green spaces are in Aurora. We still have, for instance, some golf courses that will probably be developed in not too near future, hopefully, but they will be developed. But that is an opportunity to combine connect green spaces using the trail system and allow people to enjoy these green spaces. It is not so easy anymore now, but we need to do that. I'm glad that we are talking about increasing active transportation. This is a picture from Chile, from Santiago in Chile, where they have a sign that tells it all. 30 kilometers an hour maximum speed, everybody equal opportunity, everybody equally respected in traffic. So we can use some of our roads as complete roads and say, okay, everybody has equal rights here. We'll have to go down to maximum 30, I think. I think more 25 maybe should be a low speed. But that type of opportunity exists to connect the green spaces and so on. We're using some of the local roads that don't go anywhere. Anyway, Cousins Drive is a good example. And we're treating, in planning, we're treating pedestrians and cyclists equal to car traffic. Metrolinx gave me this surprising answer when I asked them what we should do to get these crossings across the railroad. Their blunt answer was, our priority is vehicular traffic. I couldn't believe it. That is our top transportation agency in the province, not even thinking about basically pedestrian and cycling traffic. And that needs to change, but it won't change until we have a political will to stand up to Metrolinx so that they will have these crossings across the railroad traffic and tracks. We can't afford to have a barrier in the middle of the town. If we want to talk about connectivity, we need to get at in major traffic corridors like railroad and the regional roads to get connections across. And in some cases, that means great separation, but in terms of the railroad, in context of the railroad tracks, there are quite a few opportunities for level crossings, and they don't want even them. But I understand where they're coming from. They talk about safety. But it isn't safety of you and I, it is the safety of their equipment. But they trust the vehicular traffic to go across. That's okay. But when it comes to having at reasonable intervals the crossings of the railroad tracks, then we're not getting any help. I just measured.
Let's try to bring the comments towards
Yeah,
the
okay.
plan and
I appreciate Dave's presentation. I have a map here from when we first met, and I'm looking at the other map of which I have a printout now, and it's a great improvement. There's lots to be looked at.
we really
Need some time to look at that to be able to figure out where we can see opportunities, where maybe some of the things are not quite right yet. But as a major point of the current map, I don't see the crossings of the railroad tracks. we can't afford to leave them off these planning maps. If we don't even put them on the planning maps, how we are ever going to get there? So we are going to have working sessions, and I'm glad to hear that we won't do this tonight. Then we can maybe talk about how we're going to achieve. I would like to see all trails committee, I call it, and the active transportation committee members go out to the points where I can see the crossings happening. And then you at least know physically where the opportunities exist. The price of them, when they're level, we should be able to afford them. When they're underpasses, we have to work at the financing of it. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the working sessions. The comments I've received so far as a result of a request for information, formally making that, I had about 5 or 6 comments on the like the internet or whatever you call it. And it was surprising. It was next to nothing, but it was earlier. Maybe there are more now. But active transportation doesn't necessarily trigger people's involvement because it's a very technical term in a way. And they don't necessarily connect trails and active transportation. You put out trails out there, they understand that we have these nice trails. We want to have more, that would be great. And you'll have more comments. So I would like to see some increase. Well, maybe they're there already. I don't know.
Thank you, Klaus.
Okay, it's all for now. I can go on talking for the rest of the time. Anyway.
Your,
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
anyone for the first time?
Yes.
We go back to.
Though,
Yeah, go ahead.
during Dave's presentation, Lily did ask a question about like where to get the package online.
Does she have a question?
No, she asked the question in the
Oh, I didn't
chat.
see it.
Yeah, actually, Dave, if you could, this is Lil here. If you could mail the package to people who couldn't make it in person, that would be great. I actually have a few points because I myself, my family is a family of cyclists and skateboarders. You know, there are some towns and cities that model this so well. And if you look at places like, let's say, Denmark or Netherlands, what they're doing is it's not one or the other, it's both. They cycle and they skateboard. And to keep young people happy in the town, we have to build an infrastructure that does both. So like there are better skateboarding parks in King, for example. King has something. Uxbridge is amazing for cycling infrastructure. And what we see is like there are people who want to take St. John's right across to Uxbridge, but they will do everything possible to avoid Aurora because they will cycle in King Township, and then they'll avoid St. John's because there's no good, safe infrastructure. And then they'll somehow try to pick up in Uxbridge and then continue on. So I'm wondering how high schools also will be incorporated, because I really think I really think that connectivity has to include high schools, even public schools, I guess. But you know, otherwise we just have these islands, these parks kind of dotting the map. So I'm just wondering how we can do connectivity that includes youth, basically, in the city or town.
Dave?
Thanks. That's a really good point. If you look at the maps, you'll notice that we actually mapped all the schools in the town. And we try to connect directly to all the schools. There are some schools that have local road connection that are already posted at low speed and don't have a lot of traffic on it, where we didn't propose a facility. So you don't see a line directly connecting and those are generally elementary schools. But, you know, we're very much open to this committee's input on that. Absolutely, you know, connecting to schools. I said it earlier in my presentation, we need to get young people using, you know, the pedestrian and cycling infrastructure to get to and from school, because you know, when they experience and pick up that kind of habit when they're younger, the chances are higher that they'll continue to do it when they get older. And unfortunately, you know, we missed the generation where, and I'm not looking at all of you around the table, but some of you must have been taking your kids to and from school by car and dropping them off. I mean, as transportation planners, we know one of the most challenging areas to be from a risk perspective in a community is at the school where parents are dropping off their kids in by their car. It can be mayhem. So, you know, we need to try to move away from that. The school boards are, but they're also dealing with, you know, very opinionated parents who, you know, are concerned about safety. And their solution to improving safety is to give them better auto access and parking at the schools, which is not really improving safety. So we're going to tackle that in this master plan. We try to tackle it in the provincial guidelines as well. And we'll talk about that. So I'm very interested in your thoughts as you review the network, Lily and others, on how we can better connect to not just schools, but where the kids want to go after school, to the parks, to areas like that. I'm not really designing skate parks in the study, but that's a good point too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, if Lily's, are you done, Lily?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Yule?
Yeah, just real quick, just to follow up on what you said about behavioral or, you know, driving your kids to school. I definitely agree with that. However, through learning through Kitimat, especially because we've been through this whole debacle with sidewalk and safety and drop off, what we had learned is that there's a lot of people who are working, and it's the grandparents that are dropping the kids off because they're not capable of walking those distances or riding their bikes safely because they're older and they have accessibility issues. And so I think what has changed a lot, there's more parents who are either living at home with this generation of next kids, with their kids and kids, from affordability and care and working standpoint. And I don't know how you get away from that either. I've just thrown that out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have a solution, but we're going to try to find one that is a better balance than we have today.
And just a quick question. What does candidate route represent?
So they are options that could form the final recommended network for the town of Aurora. So I would argue that there are some routes on the candidate route network that are sort of duplicating. So we might pick one or the one parallel to it, but not both. It's also, you know, we applied the criteria in OT in Book 18 that speaks to a certain level of density. Part of the network too we're trying to achieve with that candidate network is this, you know, trying to be more equitable in providing access to neighborhoods that would benefit more from having a stronger and denser active transportation network. So, you know, we looked at, you know, this is Aurora, but we looked at income levels, we looked at auto ownership, we looked at areas in terms of, you know, how are they traveling to and from work? How many, you know, what majority by neighborhood is taking public transit? And that information can be really helpful and sort of a telling sign where, you know, these parts of the town would really benefit from a stronger AT network because they're already relying on other modes and less on cars compared to other neighborhoods. So we want to know that because that's sort of part of the population that if we do a good job at providing a better connected network to where they want to be, the chances are they're more likely to use it. If that makes any sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. When you've looked at your master plan and you've gone through it, have you done a liability study in terms of shared spaces, connections, and looked it up from, because there's a whole, when you start sharing spaces or adding things in roadways and looking at connections, there's a major liability issue. And so what sits on the user versus the town?
Right. So, you know, we do master plans now using the safe systems approach, which is all about vision zero and reducing risk. And, you know, Klaus talked a little bit earlier about, you know, the speed of roads is an issue from a safe systems approach. So if you have a local road, but it's an important connection, but the road isn't designed in such a way that you can accommodate a protected bike lane, for example, you know, it's single family homes with numerous residential driveways. So where should you be? You should probably be on the road, regardless of your age. So what can we do to improve the safety on that road? Well, signage is one, but reducing the speed is another. But that can be a big ask for residents. So, you know, many municipalities are moving in that direction now. I'm not sure if Aurora is ready for it, but we're going to talk about it as part of this master plan as well, on those connections. The facility type zone that we are proposing are based on the methodology in Book 18, which took road safety into consideration. Absolutely. So, that's why you're going to see more recommendations about separated infrastructure, putting the bike facility above the curb, retrofitting a road to put in, if it's a collector, a precast curb with a flex bollard on it. Yes, there's a cost, but is it really that expensive? We've revised our design guidelines, our geometric design guidelines in Canada now. Everyone realizes that, we can get along with a narrow travel lane. And guess what? When you narrow a travel lane, what does it do? As a motorist, it makes you drive a little slower and closer to the speed limit. Well, that's exactly what we want. But it also provides the benefit of additional real estate that you don't need anymore, that we could repurpose for other things like accommodating bikes. So we're going to be applying that approach to this plan as well. And we've already been doing that, as a few that have already provided some input to me over the course of the study and identified roads in Aurora that are really overbuilt. 2 honking lanes, it just make no sense. And you wonder why you have speeding issues and you have to have, traffic calming measures or increased police enforcement. But if we put AT infrastructure on those same corridors and narrow the lanes, you get the benefit of both. You'd get traffic calming, you'd get cars traveling at a lower speed, close to the posted speed limit, and you'd have safe, protected infrastructure for people cycling and walking.
One other, just on that as well, so you also have your seasonality, right? So, and your maintenance, which we tie into it, so there's cost of both associated, so just to make sure there's a footnote in for.
Yeah, actually,
that side of it as well.
it's not a footnote, and I'm glad you raised it. One of the challenges with master plans 20 years ago is they got all excited about the capital cost of building a network, but they failed to really appreciate and understand and communicate the operational cost to maintain what you build. This plan won't do that. So there'll be information in there that clearly identifies if, a project costs $2.5 million to implement, it's also going to cost $2.5 million over 7 to 10 years to maintain. And that's the cost of implementing the infrastructure. And council needs to know that too. That's really important. Because the worst thing you want to do is invest in great AT infrastructure or trails, and then over time find them that they deteriorate and that there just wasn't enough money budgeted. And it's a challenge to find that money now because council isn't, tied with other infrastructure projects. And so we want to try to avoid that by being really upfront and explaining to you all, if you build a protected bike lane, what might it cost in the future? Let me give you one last example because it's a really important question. You're not building a lot of new roads today, but if you were building a new road today and you wanted to have a bike facility on it, would you put it on the road between the curbs? No, you wouldn't. You would put it behind the curb. Well, if I'm a developer and I'm is that going to cost me more money? No, you know what? It's going to cost less money because the road between the curbs is going to be narrower. The infrastructure, the depth, the asphalt, everything that is the cost of building that road is reduced because you're designing and building a narrower road. It doesn't cost a lot to put asphalt and a little bit of granular in the boulevard on a grass median. It's a lot cheaper to do that, to be honest, and safer for everyone if you do that, because you get a narrow road that gets cars going at the speed that you're designing that road for, not 15 or 20 kilometers above the posted speed limit. And you're getting cyclists in their own space and pedestrians ideally in their own space as well. So for future roads, there will be recommendations in the plan that if and when new roads are built, and it's part of the AT network, and it should be, especially for collectors, the facilities absolutely should be above the curb and in the boulevard, no more on-route bike lanes. The new OTM Book 18, by the way, says no more conventional bike lanes where you just have paint on 4-lane roads. No more. If municipalities want to implement infrastructure on collectors or arterial roads, it has to be somehow buffered or physically separate. It shouldn't be the way we were doing it before.
One more point to that, since you brought it up, so bike lanes themselves. So I work with the city of Toronto in their bike lanes. The problem they're having is the public transportation. So the accessibility to public transportation because of the bike lane. So make sure you look at that factor because you have to be able to get people to the public transportation. So it means they have to cross the bike lane, which means they're not on the curb height anymore. They're on a road surface. So you now not AODA compliant because now you're stepping up into the bus itself. So you have to build a platform. So when you actually look at it, there's lots of costs and different problems that you come up with a solution, but it creates other problems. So you have to make sure that you're looking at all aspects of it. And then what's the overall cost to drive that change?
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit later. It's a
Yeah,
really good point.
it's-
We're designing elevated bikeways at bus stops for the city of Toronto right now along Davenport, 40 locations, and the new bikeway design guidelines have new guidance on that.
Mhm.
But when you put a bikeway in the boulevard already, it's already at height for a transit stop. So it's not, you don't have that issue as much. So there are lots of pros and cons of the different design solutions. And we're going to talk all about that. I sense that you would benefit as a committee from having a presentation on design, bikeway design from OT and Book 18. So I'll assemble a presentation and I'll have that we can show you that. I think that would be helpful for everyone too, before we get into the nitty gritty of facility types on the plan. So that, you know, you're all on the same page about the most current design guidance in the province by facility type and why, and you understand the consequences of different design treatments. I think it would be helpful. So Michael, we should do that.
Yeah, we're looking to.
Any first time?
I just had one of my comments.
Why don't we go through the committee members and then we'll
Okay.
get to the public once
Okay.
we get through. Gino?
Oh, sorry, did everybody have an opportunity to speak? So Klaus, I want to say, you know, just prior to the meeting, there were some of the main discussions. So that was my first point that I mentioned to Dave was that Aurora is cut off by the rail corridor. So I work directly with Metrolinx. I know some of the feedback that you've received. I think it's important that we challenge Metrolinx. We need to identify those routes. Level crossings will not move forward because they're looking to electrify the system. And they're also looking to double track it and have basically trains coming every 15 minutes. What we're looking for to build are tunnels. We need to do those tunnels. I presented some to council. That were done, basically going underneath. That needs to be pushed now as part of our negotiations as we move forward with Metrolinx. Okay, we need to identify, so we have to do our homework, say, okay, where do we want these crossings? Okay, and then we fight for it. Okay, yes, it's about money, but those are separate discussions, but our first as our role is to identify. In terms of safety, when you're implementing new cycling facilities, you're also looking at lighting. Okay, so that's now one of the requirements now, when you're putting in a cycling, you have to review the lighting. I know that I've asked that we move forward with LED, with switching our lighting from HPS to LED. We need to revisit that again because there are certain areas that are not meeting the current lighting requirements. And again, as we propose these facilities on these roads, we'd be looking at also improving the lighting requirements for it. So I just wanted to echo some of your concerns because to me, the rail corridor cuts Aurora in half and we need to address it. And I'm really concerned that again, Metrolinx has proposed a level crossing only at Wellington. What about St. John Side Road? It's going to be 15-minute service. Okay, so just think of the going up
Both
and down.
ways.
So
I'm gonna preempt Klaus because we could be all night. He's
But-
already identified them.
yeah,
It was already at council. We tried to make it work and we'll have that discussion, I'm sure. Once we get a little deeper in, I don't want to take too much time. I want to be mindful of everyone's time and the rest of the agenda. So why don't we leave it at that and we'll have time to discuss that. Any other members of the committee that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I would be very into a primer, Dave, on what are best practices in terms of bike lanes, and because we have a mismatch of everything all over the place. There's painted lines, there's sharrows, there's what they've done on, St. John Side Road between Bayview and Leslie. Like, I don't even know what's best practices. We have, the remnants of sort of an active transportation lane on Wellington that was put in years ago. There's these little strips on some side streets. I don't even know what they're there for. You can't even ride a bike along them because you get hit by your head on a tree that's grown over. So
This street, John Westway.
exactly, right out here. So we, as a committee and as people trying to make recommendations to council, like, we need to know what we're even talking about. And I don't even know what I'm talking about. And I'm all about this. So some kind of a primer from someone who knows what they're talking about and what are, HTA, transportation best practices, that would be super helpful.
We'll get that.
I agree with that. Like, in order for us to be successful, I think as a community member, I don't do this unlike all of you. I work in healthcare, not in your spaces. I think we need an education, give us some context so we can advance. So, good point.
Any other committee members? Wanna-
Yeah,
Sorry, I just wanted to interject, any member of the public wishing to formally submit a delegation request.
Yeah. I'm gonna allow a quick one, really quick.
no, this was just a question for Dave's presentation. Yeah, during our talk, I talked to you about protected intersections. And you mentioned there was a pilot that you were gonna do. Is that still on the table?
Right, so actually, in Ontario, we're actually developing protected intersection guidelines for the province of Ontario through an organization called the Ontario Traffic Council. So those are in development right now. Ottawa and Toronto are developing protected intersections at a few locations. I think the jury's out whether or not there's a location here in Aurora that would be a good candidate for that, but we can have that conversation when we get together as a group and you start looking at facility types. And when we do the presentation on facility design, I'll also touch on protected intersections.
Any other comments? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. I think the direction is to have a workshop scheduled. Less formal, so we can have a discussion, some education coming forward. I'll work with staff to figure out how to go about doing that. My sense, and I think everyone's on the same page, is we're not looking at rushing this thing and taking the time to do it right. I don't know what the timing is. I think I saw the end of 2023 somewhere. In my view, whatever it takes to get it right. And I think the committee is willing to put the time in to make sure we get it right. So we'll leave it at that. Can I get all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good discussion. With oh, there you go.
Turned us off, Dave.
There we go.
He leaves and then. This is off, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sick of listening to us.
So I would say, Klaus, that we're gonna move 7.3 ahead, so we can have the discussion of this delegation here. I'm not sure if you were for a particular item on the agenda. You're here for a particular item?
7.2.
Michael back. Just shake his head.
Yeah, just the Aurora Heights factors.
Okay,
7.2.
okay, so we'll deal with that after this. So, nice to meet you. So 7.3 is a memorandum from traffic transportation analysis regarding bylaw amendment on Benville Crescent. Can I get a motion to put the item on the floor, please? Owen, Gino, I'll open the floor for any discussion.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I need to understand, again, I hate a comprehensive understanding. Where in Aurora do we have parking issues related to trails? Because I think when we're moving forward with this, we're kind of looking at what's the goal here? We're trying to encourage people using our trails, but now we're trying to discourage them. So it kind of defeats the purpose. Is there an opportunity? Again, I looked at this site, I said, I see Canada Post is, again, blocking any potential lay-by-lay parking. I don't know what the town has. are there plans to create some maybe parking? I don't know what the demand is in this here, so I don't know the amount of cars. Like, do we know from, is it 4 or 5 cars, 6 cars that are typically there generally? And can we create maybe some a parking area for this? Because to me, this is a key. You know, again, I'm sorry, you know, again, it's going to get to where nobody wants this in their backyard. And again, we deal with this, you know, if it affects a few. And I think we have to look at it. What do we want from a policy change for Aurora, for our residents? We're trying to encourage people to use our trails to cycle there, right? So we're trying to build these facilities, you know, but so I kind of need to understand, is this the only location? Are there other locations? And then let's do a comprehensive review. Maybe we move out, you know, again, is there an opportunities park? Is this park slated, you know, again, is it slated for redevelopment or improvements? And maybe it's, you know, can we create some parking spaces? And maybe, you know, are there other areas? Because again, you don't want to do this piecemeal. You can do it. We should be identifying all these locations and moving out with a contract to deal with it together. And again, let's take advantage of it. When we're looking at packaging work, you package it as part of the road reconstruction for the year. You include it as that, and you include it because then you're going to lower your costs as it relates to it. So you know, again, I don't agree with putting parking restriction. I'm kind of need to also understand how did this, you know, you raised the question that there are parking restrictions right now. Was that implemented by the town or by somebody just putting up
It wasn't
So
implemented.
let's just get Mike
Sorry.
to.
Thank you. So to clarify, to my best understanding, Benfield is the only locations that have that came to town with parking concern related to trail usage. This issue kind of came. This issue kind of came in. I think in about 2021. When we are in the middle of COVID, when there was the stay-at-home order, people just wanted to use the trail, get out of the home, be active, stay healthy. And I think that's when the residents on Benfield see the increased number of people park on the street that try to access the trail. So that was the major issue from the residents, that it was during that period of time there was increased usage. But to our best understanding right now, we did periodic survey. So we have bylaw teams that go around at different time to take a look if the parking concerns still exist. But to our best understanding, that just really it decreased significantly after COVID finished or ended.
Is there still no parking restrictions on there now?
So right now we placed a temporary no parking sign until council make a formal decision as to should we move forward with implementing a permanent sign or not.
And to Gino's other question.
But under what
Just
authority?
just to
Sorry.
answer one of your questions, is there any future development happening in that area that we can, you know, introduce permanent parking?
There's no future development in the area.
Archer Hill.
Orchard Hill, yeah.
Yeah, it's right now it's being demoed for development, which is you're less than a kilometer from the spot where you're talking.
That's itself, that development itself, just south of that.
So we call that routine accommodation, where you take advantage of things that move forward, where you know, again, you try to deal with these issues. But again, I think you indicated that there is also other locations where there are also
Well,
issues with parking where, you know, people typically to get to it, you would I mean, ultimately, I'd like people to cycle there, you know, but again, or walk to it, but sometimes it's, you can't do it and you want to go you love the trail, you need to get there.
Your issue is it's the start or the end of the trail, depending which side of the
Yes.
trail you're on. So you're encouraging people to use the trail, but you're not giving them the means to start or end. That's the issue.
Yes.
Right? So you need to look at, okay, so I agree, you need to look at what's the volume of usage. And what's the means around it. So really, when you look around it, where's your closest parking to that area? You have the school up on Stone Road, you have Shepherd's Bush. And then you have some parking in around some of the industrial complexes off industrial, off Edwards up in that area, but you don't have anything facilitate to the end of trail or start a trail. And that's what my guess is what your concern is, that there's nowhere. And so by the residents coming forward and saying that there's an issue with the parking on the street, there has to be a resolution somewhere in there. And I think your concept of doing a study to look at, if you're going to look at it, do a broader comprehensive study and
Yes.
say, where are the issues and where do the issues lie? Because this probably isn't the only area. We just haven't heard somebody come forward with it. So if you're going to make a plan, an overall master plan that accommodates everybody. So I agree with you on that point.
Steve, what is the parking situation on Benville as it stands right now?
Well,
I don't understand that, so.
okay, so we started going to Benville Crescent. To give you the background, why it became important to us is we had a tree, memorial tree with the bench. And we're all recently retired and started hiking a lot through COVID. And we had this tree planted, so it was a natural spot as the start of the trail system for people coming from Newmarket, Aurora to meet there and to begin the trail. We started in other places. We started Shepherd's Bush, we started Willow Farm Trail, which is residential. So we start at various places, all the way up to Holland Landing and back. And
I'm very familiar with the
typically-
trail, I've ridden the
yes,
whole length.
so typically when we started, there was no parking restriction signs. Then when I guess we first became aware of it was January of 2021. So we came for the memorial and there was temporary signs. So we called the town about it. And they said that, no, I guess it was by the summertime and they said there was construction on Bayview. And when the construction was over in November, those temporary signs would go away. So we came back in January, the temporary signs were still there. The construction had finished and now there was a large sign, permanent sign put up by the town with the map saying that anyone that wanted to use the Evans Park or the trail system had to park at Shepherd's Bush.
Wow.
Yes.
And we've got people, I mean, we talked about this at council and this was a neighborhood park. And that they didn't have to provide parking for a neighborhood park, even though my grandchildren met friends of theirs at this park. My daughter apparently can't do that anymore. Like parks and trail systems, we all use it because we are hikers. We do use it I use the system, I put my backpack on and I walk the kilometers to Metro and I walk to Aurora Park and I walk to the farmer's market. And when I was a teacher, I walked through the Case Woodlot to go to school. And every day, because I live right there, I see the families coming out through the trail system. So we really support this active transportation committee and what your goals are. But we can't do away with cars either, because if I want to get together with our friends, and there's 13 of us on this list, and we know we're not the only hiking group, we have to meet somewhere and we can't all cycle there. But when we go there, usually it's just a handful of us and we carpool when we can. And usually there's nobody there. But there's signs. I contacted Sandra Humphreys about this and I contacted the town council. She responded to me. She said that the temporary signs were coming down. I sent her a picture of this permanent sign. She said it did not have council's approval and she instructed whoever was responsible for it to take it down. It was down within 24 hours. So we were really surprised. So then we learned that, that signs can't go up unless they have council's approval. So we were very surprised a few months later to come back and see, once again, signs are up without council's approval. Temporary signs held down by sandbags. Everywhere.
So let's,
We're afraid to go there because our neighbors who have been a bit aggressive. Sorry, these aren't formal delegations, they're
so let's, okay.
comments, and after the fact can be emailed to.
Yeah, so let's bring it to what the committee has to decide on. There's three options currently on the floor in terms of the report that came to council, and it's before you as well. No parking on one side, no parking on both sides is basically the three options that we're here kind of to give a sense to staff on how to move forward so that they can generate another report and come to council so that council can make a final decision on here. So if there's anyone who feels like they want to move a particular one of those three forward, I'd be open to that.
Can I say them again, please, John?
So
The options?
no parking at all on both sides.
Okay.
No parking on one side, east, I think it's east or the west side,
The east side.
the east side, and then no parking on both sides.
It's not the same.
Sorry,
Parking.
parking on both sides,
No
no parking on one side, or no parking on both sides.
Sorry, Kate, if I want to just clarify, the no parking on both sides is just from Bayview to just where the bend end.
Yeah.
Not the entire,
No,
Yeah.
yeah,
that's correct.
By the way, I don't know if people have seen that clearly, but at the entrance at Crossing Bridge Place, there's lots of room to park. It's only 18 houses from the trailhead. There's lots of room. It's just that people might see the sign that says don't park here. The only problem is, I think where the trailhead is, there's a lot going on there. There's some things that cannot be moved, and there's also the community mailbox. So cars are probably coming in and out of there a lot to. Anyways, I wasn't sure if we only have those three options because Crossing Bridge Place would be clear.
There could be other options. The only options that were part of the report were those. Gino?
So I just wanted to say, you can move that, the Canada Post, it can be moved all the way. It'd be a request to.
It's at the entrance to the park, which is so you're not.
Yeah,
gonna
but it
park
can
in
be
front of that
put
anyway.
to the other side of the crescent.
It's hard to move.
I
It's
know,
hard to
Canada
manage
Post.
that.
I think, so the other concern that I have with this area, and maybe again, from an engineering perspective, it is a rural cross section, and I know some, when you're looking at the cross section. If you can't build parking within, can we do maybe lay by lay parking? And that's why I was asking how many cars are there? Again, as far as I'm concerned, you have to look at it from a safety perspective around the bend, maybe not allow parking, but if there's a straightaway, then. But to restrict it to where we have no parking, I won't agree to that. I think we need to.
I think the problem is there is a bend. That's the problem. There's the.
But there's a straightaway, so what I've indicated is that on the bend, maybe you restrict it there, but again, we have to look at on bends, if we're going to impose this type of policy. It has to be town-wide, then we have to look at all our crescents. It can't just be in this particular location. If the policy of the town is to say from a safety perspective, then we go around at all these crescents and we basically say from here to here, we will not allow parking. It's not just on this street.
Do you know, Michael, is there restrictions?
So currently, there's no restrictions in a bylaw that speaks of no parking within the inside curb radius of the bend. But we are looking at undertaking a townwide parking study. As part of the parking study, we'll identify a certain area to be included under the general provision of the bylaw that no signage will be required, but parking will be restricted. So for example, like fire hydrant or crosswalk. These are the areas that we're looking at to potentially add under the general provision of the bylaw. But again, we haven't started the project yet, but the project is in the pipeline.
So I mean, for the agenda tonight, it's kind of and I hear, bigger picture stuff, but we're trying to figure out how we can best advise staff so that they can best advise council on how to resolve this issue. So is there anyone who wants to put anything forward? If not, we can leave it status quo, and that's the direction to the staff, and they'll
Comments?
do whatever they is.
I'm gonna put a motion forward. I think right now that we allow parking in this area until such time that staff report back with a comprehensive review in terms of the town policy as it relates to parking and the issues of safety around
Both sides or one side?
both sides.
Both sides. Is there a second to that? Else? Any further discussion on that? So allow parking on both sides up until staff does a kind of a master plan on
Yes.
on all of these areas. All clear on that? All those in favor?
Sorry, that can be a formal motion.
This direction to staff.
That would have to be made by council and the CAO. Made by committee members is my understanding. I can
So maybe as comments, maybe just as
comments, it
comments.
could be received as comments.
It's fine.
Yeah.
And we're not directing council to do anything.
Yeah,
We're
sorry.
advising staff
Yeah.
on the committee's perspective.
Yeah, so the comments can be received, but it can't be formalized. in
Formal
a
motion.
motion. The motion is what's been provided. It can be amended. Though.
Okay.
Can I put another, maybe not another motion, but maybe another comment forward? That we look at these trail entrances and look at opportunities providing, whether it's lay by lay parking or parking somewhere, some minimal parking within these areas, and maybe a study be done to see or work with the with those that have knowledge there about how many spaces to provide, whether it's 4 spaces or something. At these trail entrances.
I'm in favor of that. I'm the last one to, sorry. May I, if the last one to encourage more surface parking in Aurora, we have an insane amount of surface parking.
But you have to make it safe.
But, at these trailheads,
I'm just gonna,
people want to go for it.
I'm gonna hold on for 1 second, because I want some clarity on how we can proceed. We have a motion on the floor,
Yes.
which is what's part of the agenda.
Mhm.
You're suggesting we can't put any other motions on the floor. And
You could amend the motion that is put forward, but what I'm saying is that the committee members cannot direct staff. The direction has to be provided by council or the CAO.
yeah, the motion is comments from the committee.
Yeah.
To staff.
The comments can be received.
Yeah, it's still unclear on,
Received and
How we-
referred to staff for consideration for further action as appropriate.
which
So-
is what's.
Yeah.
That's what's on the floor already. But they're, as long as their comments are very specific
Comments.
in
will be
terms of
received.
what direction they would like staff to proceed in. It's ultimately staff's
As chair, you'll receive the.
review to whatever they write in your report that will ultimately come to council.
Yes, so those comments would be captured by staff.
So that's, we'll stick to that. Anything outside of that, maybe we have new business. Do we add?
Have new business. to
We don't
ask
have.
for, right? Didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Guess we'll see if time.
Anything outside of that, we'll have to discuss it. Well, I thought we had included new business in these agendas. So that's those comments will be forwarded to staff. Staff will generate a report, which will come to council. So we won't be voting on that. Is that right? So we'll vote on the motion that's on the floor, which is that the memorandum regarding request for parking bylaw amendment on Benville Crescent be received and that the active Transportation and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee comments regarding request for parking bylaw amendment on Benville Crescent be received and referred to staff for consideration and further actions as appropriate. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. So let's go back to thank you. 7 point.
Thank you.
Thank you. 7.2. Which is the memorandum from traffic transportation analysis request for traffic calming measures in various locations. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the motion, which is that the memorandum regarding request for traffic calming measures various locations be received and that the active transportation traffic safety committee comments regarding the request for traffic calming measures various locations be received and referred to staff for consideration and further actions as required. I get a mover and a seconder for that. Gio. Let's open the floor for discussion. So there's a report before you with some analytics on the various locations. Any comments or questions?
I think in light of the proposed master plan that we are reviewing for active transportation, that we delay any further implementation on traffic calming. And that we review our policy, which is now, let's see, 2015, it's 7 years old. That it be reviewed again in the to see if it needs any updates, given that I think there is a 2018 again an updated traffic calming guideline that was put out, and that we kind of review that in light and make recommendations. I also want to note that it could potentially and I'm going to use Guelph because that was something that I've read recently that I like, that had the opportunity. The city of Guelph has put a policy, very thorough, but it does raise issues about impacts that traffic calming can have to what we're trying to, again, introduce cycling facilities and having to put these things in and then to take them out. So I'm asking that the policy be delayed, that any I'm not asking the policy, I'm asking that the implementation of any traffic calming in Aurora be delayed until we do a thorough review and update. And I would ask that you reference our colleagues in York region, other municipalities to see what they're doing.
So will the master plan deal with traffic calming?
The master plan itself won't directly deal with traffic calming, but then there will be, like what Dave mentioned earlier, speeding is one of the factors that just makes people uncomfortable to use certain facility. So there will be some coordination or I guess linkage between the two, but we're not at that stage yet. But that's something that we can look into.
Comments?
Well, I was just gonna say what Dave said is that they often go hand in hand, and to link back what Gio just said, I mean, like we should like put it together as a package, like not just do it ad hoc, because you're just gonna do it and then you might have to take it.
Thank you, and you're wasting money. Yeah, it just happened.
Any other comments?
Just one question. I assume that we'll also know what our neighboring cities or towns like Richmond Hill and Newmarket have in place.
through the master plan. Sorry, what, can you just repeat your question again?
As far as traffic calming. And another thing is, north of St. John's, there's a lot of trucks that barrel through residential neighborhoods to bypass the intersections. So, it might be that there are reports or surveys done, but it has to be at the time of day, hopefully, when that will be captured. The fact that a lot of construction vehicles and trucks are using shortcuts through residential neighborhoods and traveling very fast.
Okay.
Sorry, where is that? Where,
Ward 1, there's a lot of that happening in Ward 1.
that part of the subdivision development? Because I mean, I'm gonna speak to where I live, you know, we've got Geranium constructing homes, and yes, there's trucks going through, but you know, you can't implement the
I
new
think it doesn't have-
restrictions.
Yeah, it's been going on for decades, but also away from the schools, William Graham, you know, certain areas like that. Just, I think that there are some savvy travelers, especially near St. John's, that just try to avoid the intersections and the lights or delays.
Okay, so we're here to discuss the 5 that have been identified. 2 of them fit the criteria, is the one at Aurora Heights and one of the ones at Conover. 1 and 4 on the agenda. So far, the comments are pause, wait till we finish this master plan, and then revisit these. The kind of the consensus of the committee.
Yes, because it impacts, again, the issue is we go to build it and then we're having to then rip it out to accommodate. And again, if we can implement active transportation, and again, we all know those of us that are practicing is that the wider the road is, the more it's susceptible to people speeding. If we implement narrower roads, you're almost accomplishing things at the same time.
Yeah, so sorry. So I agree to some degree with where you're going with it. Can I make a motion or to bring forward, there are temporary calming measures you can put in place that don't take a lot of infrastructure and cost that you could put in the interim of a larger study. So that way you're appeasing both parties to it. So I would look at probably putting something temporary in to appease the current issue while you're building a larger study.
Michael, are these temporary?
Yeah, we could look into implementing the flexible sign that we have in the town. So that's something that we can look into. But again, those sign has to come down during the winter months for winter maintenance purposes.
The maintenance.
So the question is, the comments revolve around Conover number 1 and Aurora Heights 4, which are the only 2 that comply with criteria, or do we want to do any other ones?
So I just wanted to add something in terms of temporary. Does Aurora have the electronic warning signs, basically as temporary, instead of putting the deflectors, basically putting something permanent, you know, educating people you're going too fast, slow down, you know, the flashing, basically, do you have that? Or is it something that you guys have invested in that you can put maybe in these areas?
Yep. So the town we have, I believe we have 8 sets of the digital speed sign that we rotate around within the town. And so on a rotational basis.
That's another option that they could do. But
Yeah, it's a visual deterrent, not an actual deterrent. That's the only issue with those. So when you're trying to calm traffic, it's just
it's something in the road will definitely narrowing the road or putting an obstruction in the middle. Absolutely.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, this item talks about memorandum from the analyst. I don't have this memorandum.
It's on the agenda.
Where is it?
It's in the agenda.
It's online.
It's in the agenda.
I can't find it here. How do you get to it?
It's on the website. When you go into the agenda, it's an attachment. It's an attachment on the agenda.
Okay.
I can show it to you.
I'm gonna, yeah, I'll find these things.
Okay, we'll make sure you have those prior to the meeting.
Maybe open hard
Yeah,
copy next.
maybe we'll print out a copy for you as well and
Yeah, in future, if they had any attachment, like anything at all. Try to send it, you don't buy. But this is-
we can do that
Do you still print?
sometimes.
Okay. Do you still print? I know we've all moved digital and then my eyes are killing me, so I'm.
So just to summarize, generally wait until the master plan, but in the interim, if we can find some solutions, some quick wins on 1 and 4 that fit the criteria. Is that kind of where the committee is right now?
Could you repeat that? Yeah, repeat.
So generally to pause until the master plan is done, but in the interim, to deal with some of these issues, particularly 1 and 4 that fit the criteria, do some temporary measures to try to deal with whatever staff has in their arsenal to try to
Sure.
deal with.
And the temporary measures were the flexible boulders. We were
Yeah. And any
signage.
and the rotating sign, we have, I think, 8 of those signs are going
Look
too
at that.
fast.
There's lots of options.
Yeah, there's just
Yeah.
temporary.
I've seen them. Definitely. They usually coincide with I think the town's done surveys where they put the strip across the road to,
Yeah.
Count traffic. yeah. Yeah.
I don't believe that councillors Ron Weiss and Harold Kim are present online, but they had, I know that Woodland Hills Boulevard, Ward 1, and William Graham were identified, but I didn't hear you read it out in the list of streets.
The 4 are Conover Avenue between River Ridge Boulevard and Borealis. Number 2 is Conover between Martel Gate and River Ridge Boulevard. Number 3 is Kennedy Street between Bathurst Street and McGee Crescent. Number 4 is Aurora Heights between Bathurst Street and Delane Drive. And number 5 is Allenvale Drive between Carlisle Crescent, North Leg, and Convent Crescent. The 2 that fit the criteria currently are number 1 and number 4. Councillor Gillen?
Thank you. I just wanted to get some context and feedback from the committee on Kennedy between Bathurst and McGee. They were very high in the volume, but yet they fell short of 2 kilometers for the warrant for this traffic calming. And just, it's kind of interesting that all of Kennedy has traffic calming all the way to Yonge Street, with the exception of this one little section that zooms off Bathurst. Yet, it approves off Aurora Heights, it approves off Youthwood Heights, and I know Orchard Heights is already kind of in the motions of their petition, and there seems to be kind of a habit of traffic flying off Bathurst Street onto these little feeder streets. So I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on the one here that's not being recommended, just based on the context of that street as it stands. I'm grateful that you agree that the ones that are there already comply, Aurora Heights and the other one are good going forward, but I just thought maybe you could provide some feedback on maybe the data that's here that's showing this today.
Just to Rachel's point, just backing up even further, just for my own education, how do these streets and these hotspots get identified?
Residents.
They identified through a petition from residents.
Petitions from residents, complaints, okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, the report will say the warrants and it'll tell you.
So just petitions. So if residents call, does the town not then do a study?
Yes. Yeah, and it's on there. So if you look at, when you actually look at it, there's a traffic count per day on there. So they do their due diligence in the area. If they identify the problem area, if it qualifies under that due diligence.
Right.
There's three warrants. The first one, a petition, the second one, safety requirements, and the third one, technical requirements. And there's definitions under all of them.
Yeah.
And then they're summarized in the chart.
I think
That's all
what
that
happened, what happened, Ward 1, Woodland Hills, there was a petition, but it got sidetracked. But there were traffic safety concerns already identified, and there was a survey of like 120 names signed. That was quite a while ago, though. Nothing got done.
Lily, can you forward that to me again? I'll look into it right away.
Sure. Ron Weiss could do that, but I'll get the email address and have that done.
So can I, based on the comments, Rachel's comments, if we look at so we've identified two that qualify. We're looking at putting temporary until a plan is done. There's no harm in putting temporary because we're calming traffic or slowing traffic in residential areas. We're protecting the safety of the residents. There's no harm in doing that in all areas that are identified on this list. Because it's a temporary measure while you conduct further information, get further information. So I would put forward that whether they meet it or not, if it's identified, deal with it, do a proper study, and then make a final.
The only outlier is number 5, which is, the other ones were very close, 15 kilometers, which I'm at 13 kilometers. The only outlier was number 5. Although, the counts were pretty high.
Yeah, your count is within.
Yeah, it's the kilometers per hour over posted speed. That's up to the committee, what direction you want to take.
That's my.
So all of them, all 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments? House?
Yeah.
Yep.
May I just mention that my experience is that these bumps on the road are differently constructed. Some of them are quite shallow, and others you really have to watch. Like
So we're not recommending those. We're recommending those temporary kind of, I don't know what you call them.
Flexible
Temporary
posts.
traffic.
Flexible posts.
Flexible post in the middle of the road that can be removed during the winter as a temporary measure. Not yet, no.
But in future, if they are being constructed, there should be a common denominator. We should be having design standards that will be enforced, basically. Yeah, some of them are just impossible to negotiate really. If my car had to go in for repairs because which means I'm
Raise your car.
going to pass over them. But
Slow down.
the other streets where they are very, very shallow, Heights Drive up in the northwest town, end of the town, you hardly notice for it. So there have to be design standards that could be enforced wherever you're going to put them in bed. That's my concern with traffic calming measures. Anyway.
Any other comments on?
Sorry. Can I just,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
so I just want, yeah, so I just want to clarify. So we do have a standard of what we use when we build speed cushion or speed humps. I believe if I remember correctly, the height that we implement is 85 centimeter. So that's across town what we do. Every time when we implement new traffic calming measure, the height of the speed humps or speed cushion will be 85 centimeter. But the problem is over time they depress. So some of them just got like a little bit shallower. But we do have a standard in place. And again, that's what that's the guideline that we use when we implement new speed cushions.
So I'm going to add a couple of things. So the design that's picked is sometimes dependent on whether it's a transit corridor. And again, you're also trying to accommodate fire. It's always about safety. Some municipalities, that's what I was asking for a review, if it's identified as a transit corridor or typically on collector roads, they will not implement. So the speed cushion design allows, because it has a wider wheelbase, for you to typically go right through. But the problem with speed cushions that they impact if you're trying to do some active transportation, they have to be re-engineered, redesigned for it. As it relates to Kennedy, give you some history. And again, maybe I shouldn't be speaking to it because I live off one of the adjacent streets, but it didn't, so my concern with the policy right now is that when you're saying, you know, what are the affected streets? And I kind of look at this and going, okay, do we not have, that are feeder streets to this collector road adjacent, not have a say? Typically, Aurora has moved forward and just looked at the people living on that street. I'm sorry, I'm a resident too, okay? And what you do sometimes when you're doing that is push the traffic somewhere else, okay, onto another adjacent street. So then these people, and I'm gonna speak to it, right? I'm going around some of these speed cushions, right? So now I'm imposing on this street. So are we going to then move forward and just basically put speed cushions everywhere? You know, so I think we kind of have to look at that and say, okay, how do we address this? And again, this is why I asked you for the engineering. I'm concerned about the grades. I'm concerned about the ones that you put in at Kennedy, right? Past St. George on Kennedy, right down that steep hill. Okay, ours said that that's not a 5% grade in there. Okay, and you guys, and I don't know if council approved that. They must have, because again, that does not, I can guarantee if I look at the engineering drawings, that is beyond our criteria and it should not have been installed because those are dangerous. So you set yourself for liability. You have a policy that says 5%. If a smart lawyer looks at that, okay, we can be sued. The town can be sued. So I'm just raising these concerns there.
No, thank you for your comment. So I just want to clarify that the 5% that's noted in the policy, it's not a fixed number. There's wording in the policy that allows staff to exercise engineering judgment when we implement the traffic calming measure at grades with greater than 5%. So it is in the policy.
We're getting off.
No, but I'm
off
just
of the
trying to
focus.
answer.
But let's try to
question I
stick on, just in the interest of time. I've been very lenient. I may not be in the next meeting, just so you know, give you a heads up. Trying to streamline all the comments to what's on the floor for everyone's benefit. So as it stands right now, the comments that will go back to staff, we won't be voting on it, are to implement temporary measures on all 5 of the identified locations, and also refer it to the master plan to have a more global approach to all of these. Everyone okay with that? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. No information items. Can you just verify whether new business is to be put on agenda items for committees?
I think that is something that we now in the future.
Okay.
We asked for it. Yeah, we asked for
Yeah.
a policy update.
So,
So why don't we just informally, right now, if anyone has any new business outside of the quick discussion on I'll underline quick. Faust?
Yeah, I'm wondering whether it's possible to look at yield signs as a feature in our traffic. Instead of having 4-way stop signs everywhere, have yield signs on the local road going on to a collector road, and there's good sighting, and it's being done continuously anyway. People go on, they look, yes, but go on, they don't stop, totally stop. And a yield sign would formalize what is actually happening in the intersection. Good vision both sides, you have no problem overseeing. The only thing you have to worry about is pedestrians on the sidewalks. Take consideration. But the yield sign is not being used. You're using them in the roundabouts. That's the only place you find them in this town. And I think we should be considering them as part of transportation policy that should, implement yield signs instead of 4-way stop signs. If we can get this on the agenda here somehow, I don't know how this works now.
Is there any, it wouldn't fall within the parking plan that you're currently doing? It wouldn't fall in terms of the
No.
master plan that
It won't fall into any of those plans.
any of those plans? So how can we have a discussion? You know what, leave it with me, and I'll think about how to address that. Okay. Leave it with me.
Look at the legal aspect, and that will drive it.
Any other new business? Lily, you're okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, then we are done. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Gino, Owen, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Our
you.
Inaugural meeting. We'll try to make it a little smoother next time. We'll get better at it. Everyone.